one of the staple foods in Cameroon would be something called fufu. Fufu is just made from maize flour. And when we were in Cameroon, I remember my mother told me one day, because we normally take maize to the grinding mill, which was a bit far from my home. And my mother had taken a big container, about 10 kilos of maize to the grinding mill. And later on in the day, she told me, can you go and check if it is ready, if they've grinded it already, if it is already flour. Just said, go and check. And when I went, it was grind already, it was ready to be taken back by my mother. And I decided to carry, instead of just checking and going to tell her that it is ready. I decided to carry, and I don't know what I wanted really to do, but I just carried it on my head, going home. And just before I arrived, then I slipped off and I fell, and it spilled out on the mud. And then I tried, because I knew I'm in trouble, big trouble. In fact, they did not tell me to carry, and I decided to carry. So I tried to put it back in the container, and then some of the sand got into it, and I just took it home. I told nobody. I was so scared. I just put it in the kitchen, and then I sat very, very far from my mother that whole day. But later on, when she wanted to cook in the evening, then she found that. I don't want to tell you what happens after, but yeah. She knew what was best, She told me, go and check, but I checked and I decided to carry, because I thought I knew what was best. When the leper came to Jesus, he submitted to him, he kneels before him, and he said, Lord, if you want, make me well. He did not say, please make me well, please heal me, please cleanse me of leprosy. He said, if you want. It's not about what he wants, but Lord, if it is your will that I be healed, then let it be so. According to the leper, he knew, he wanted to be cleansed, but it had to be according to God's will, not just what he wanted. And I think this is a big lesson for us. This was a big lesson for me, that my mother knows better, that I'm not just going to go and carry and I bring. She would have told me, go and carry, if she knew I was able. But because I thought I was able, I decided to carry. The consequences, I got the result of that, and I learned my lesson the hard way. But if only I could submit to my mother what she wanted, what she told me to do, there would be no problem. And I think at times, my dear brothers and sisters, as Christians, especially when we go through difficulties, we are asking God what to do for us. And that is okay. God, please grant me healing. God, help me to do this or achieve that and that and that. But it's so important to remember that it has to be according to God's will. Maybe what we are going through, God would not allow anything evil to happen to us. At the same time, God is not going to also allow us to go through situations that we know are going to separate us from Him. So whatever thing we go through, we have to realize that it is happening because God allowed it. If only we can learn, like the leper, to say, Lord, if this is what you want, if you want me to continue to be a leper, to your name be the glory, I submit totally to you. And that is the sign, the fact that he kneels down before him is an act of surrender, like saying, Lord, I submit myself totally, completely to you. I am not what I want myself to be, but I want you to do what you want for me. Let your will in my life be done. Let what you want be done in my life, not just what I want. Therefore, when we make our prayers, It's important we ask what we are asking for, but it's more important to make sure that, no, God, I want this, if this is your will. And this is the prayer that Jesus taught us himself when he taught us the Our Father, but most especially when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, Mark chapter 14, yes. He said, Father, let this cup be taken away from me. If you wish, let this cup be taken away from me, but let it be your will. It's not just what I want. Let your will be done. Let it be your will, not my will. And if only we can learn to submit to God's will, then we know everything is according to his will. So even if we go through difficulties, we know God allowed it. It is his will, and his will is always for our good. He is never going to work against us. His will is always for our good. If only I could just submit to my mother's will and say, okay, God, I will just go and check, and I tell my mother that it's ready, and then she will find a way to bring it back home. I thought I knew best, and what happens, happens. And at times we feel that we know best, that we know better than God. We can tell God what we want him to do, and we want to force him to do for us what we want. It's important that we must learn to submit to his will. So my dear brothers and sisters, as we go through the day, as we go through the week, let us just try to remember again the disposition of the leper to God's will. Kneeling before God, submitting to him and saying, Lord, if you want, let me be healed. If you want, if only you want. Not just what you don't want, if you want. And Jesus said to him, of course I want. Because that is a profession of faith. That is saying, Lord, I feel I want to be healed, but it has to come from you, not just from what I want. Let us therefore continue to ask God in his love and in his mercy to grant us the wisdom to submit at all times to his divine will.